had to reimagine what my life was and what was available to me and who I was in response to everything. Because another thing that I didn't really want to acknowledge, but which was true, was that this experience had changed me. I had suppressed a lot of anger for years. In prison, I had kind of numbed myself to a lot of the more hurt and painful emotions that arose because of everything that had happened. Because it honestly, if I allowed myself to feel all of the feelings of being wrongly convicted while I was still in prison, I would have lost my mind. I would have lost my mind. And I couldn't do that. I did not want this experience to change me and turn me into an angry, bitter person. So I numbed myself. That sort of anger became this simmering sadness that I just was sad every day. And then when I got out, I suddenly felt angry. I was safe enough to feel angry. And that anger really couldn't be directed at any one person or thing, because I understood that it wasn't just my prosecutor's fault. It was Rudy Gaday's fault. It was the media's fault. It was the prosecutor's fault. It was everyone's fault. It was my fault because, I didn't know that I needed to call a lawyer, and there were a million ways that all of this could have gone differently, and everyone was implicated in it. And there was no escape because it was ongoing. It was not that I came home and it was over. It's not over. It's not over today. So one of the things that I did take home with me was a more nuanced understanding of criminals, because I just spent the last 4 years living alongside people who were guilty, who had committed crimes, and some of them horrible crimes. And I had a more nuanced perspective of how they had been, in some ways, not to say that they weren't responsible for their actions, they totally were, but these were a lot of very broken people who were struggling with mental illness and neglect and abuse and drug addiction, and a lot of people who had very, very bad choices and only bad choices in front of them, and weren't people who had families who loved them, who visited them, So I came home from prison with a more nuanced understanding about the kinds of people who end up going to prison.
Even people like Rudy Guede.
I think about Rudy Gaday a lot, and I actually have a whole podcast episode devoted to the fact that he was released from prison not too long ago, after 13 years, and thinking about was there anything that society could have done to have put that young man on a different path so that he didn't do what he did to Meredith? And, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if he was, if he's a psychopath and he would have inevitably hurt someone along the way, or if he was someone who was adrift and didn't get the support he needed in his developmental years, and he spiraled out of control and ended up taking someone's life. I don't know, but these are big questions that are worth thinking about, because the why matters. The why did something like this happen matters if we want to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, I have to be honest and say, I'm not sure I could rise that far above. And not just when it comes to Rudy and his prison sentence, but all of it. The police, the prosecutor, the justice system, the media, the public, everything.
Well, I think it all comes down to perspective, and Amanda's is really evolved.
In this whole tragic series of events, I'm the one who lived. So there's that, first of all. I got to go home eventually, and it still haunts me to this day what might have happened if I had never met Raphael and it was just me and Meredith home that night, what could have happened. And I wondered, like, if I had been home and we were together, would we have been able to fight him off? Or would we both be dead? I don't know. But one sort of perspective is I lost my freedom. I lost my identity. I lost a lot, but I didn't lose my life. And so the fact that I get to try to, and I think this is something you guys probably talk a lot about on this podcast, because it is true that in a lot of true crime, the victim's perspective is overlooked because, one, a lot of times something bad just happened to a victim. Like, they didn't do anything to deserve what happened to them. And so their agency really is